Don't want to watch She-Hulk? I don't blame you, not one bit. Let's just say my expectations were low after seeing the trailer, despite feeling fairly confident in Tatiana Maslany's acting abilities, and sunk to subterranean levels every week as the show progressed. Not much happened, and what did happen, I wish Doctor Strange could erase from my mind. So that you, dear viewer, don't have to suffer through the same pain, here are a few takeaways from the series that will have you prepared for the next movie in Marvel's ever-expanding universe. Spoilers ahead, obviously. Meet Jennifer Walters, our titular character who reluctantly adopts the moniker She-Hulk. This is an obvious derivative of her cousin Bruce Banner's name, the Hulk, although she had little to do with its creation. That honor belongs to some rando news reporter, but just as you don't get to choose Tony's pet name for yourself, you also don't get to choose your superhero name in this world. Jen is also a talented lawyer, as described by the writers themselves, and much more interested in being a career woman than a hero until the end of the series. Throughout the show, she works at the law firm GLK&H as the face of their new superhero law division. She got her powers after getting into a car accident with Bruce, and he bled all over her arm. In the comics, she actually required a life-saving blood transfusion from her cousin, so I'm not really sure why they switched this, other than not wanting She-Hulk to owe her existence to a man. Speaking of the man himself, Bruce Banner in Skaar. Bruce is still in his Smart Hulk phase, and while he tries to help Jen get acquainted with her new powers, she assures him that women have to deal with anger infinitely more than men, and are therefore better equipped to handle their power set. I'm sure that won't come back to haunt her at any point in this story. So Bruce lets her get back to her career and flies off into space to handle some business of his own. As it turns out, he has a son that was presumably conceived during the events of Thor Ragnarok. Meet Skaar, who turns up at the family reunion at the end of this last episode for about 5 seconds. He is most definitely a candidate for the Young Avengers and will most certainly show up in the future. Let's just hope he adopts a better style, because that haircut does not work on Earth. Also introduced in the first episode is the supervillainous Titania. She's She-Hulk's arch-nemesis, possessing a lot of your classic abilities such as superhuman strength and durability. In the show, not much is known about the origin of her abilities, and she kinda just shows up in the middle of court, throws some benches, and gets arrested, only to be released in a subsequent episode with little explanation. For most of the show's run, she acts like any other Instagram influencer, posing, taking pictures, and beefing with Jen Walters. Who knows where this character will show up next in the MCU? I just hope the next time we'll get more fighting than posing, as she was horribly underutilized in my opinion. Emil Blonsky. The Abomination is back, with a completely reformed personality, wink wink. But no, seriously, Blonsky seems to have turned over a new leaf that is entirely made out of oddly touching haikus. Jin manages to get Emil out of his jail cell, the only condition being that he's barred from transforming into the Abomination ever again with an inhibitor. That goes about as well as you'd expect, and by the end of the series, Blonsky is chilling as a free man with Wong in Kamartage, where presumably the US legal system has no jurisdiction. Speaking of Wong, the writers decided to write him into the show for a surprising number of episodes as Twitter armor. Their words, not mine. Clearly, they were expecting some backlash. It kind of makes you wonder why they didn't just fix the problem that they anticipated, but oh well. Wong's presence did bring a smile to my face, but that's kind of an issue when his non-presence means the show reverts to its boring self. His arc across the season was that he broke the Abomination out of prison for the events in Shang-Chi, showed up in court to testify that it was indeed his fault that Blonsky committed the offense of turning into the Abomination, and then noped right out of there when it was pointed out that what he did was illegal. Yeah, it seems like the Sorcerer Supreme is one of those rules for thee but not for me guys, because this doesn't get addressed again. Even after fighting demons with She-Hulk and taking a fake magician to court, everyone just kind of ignores it. Matt Murdock, Daredevil. Easily the best character on the show. His appearance also lifted the show's ratings out of the gutter. So, I never watched Daredevil's show on Netflix, so I can't speak to how his performance here compares to that show, but he's definitely lightened up a bit to fit in with the show's comedic undertones. Matt's purpose in the story is to absolutely destroy She-Hulk in the courtroom, fight some crime, and then become Jin's official boyfriend. A lot of emphasis gets put on that last part, but there are at least 2 scenes dedicated to showing just how agile and competent of a fighter he is. While I don't recommend watching the whole show, watching the Ribbit and Rip It episode, or even just his scenes from that episode, would definitely be worth it. Luke Jacobsen, designer to the stars, or should I say, the superheroes. He's basically Edna mode. Don't look too much into it, but Matt did come all the way from New York to represent him, considering the fact that he has an interest in his expertise. Madisynn. Even if you haven't seen the show, you've probably heard her name. Over and over again. Some people would have you believe that she could take on Thanos herself, while others never wish to have her name uttered ever again in the MCU. I personally didn't hate her, because she was at least an interesting character interacting with the world in an otherwise bland sea of archetypes. She's a ditzy alcoholic who finds herself wrapped up in the fake magician subplot, making pacts with demons and so forth. She gets sent through a portal to Wong, who she soon nicknames Wongers, and thus the internet's new favorite odd pair was born. Nikki, Pug, and Mallory Book. These 3 characters all work at GLK&H, with Nikki being Jen's best friend and paralegal, Pug being the only nice guy attorney working at the firm, and Mallory being the no-nonsense other female lawyer. Mallory represented Jen as a professional courtesy when the latter was involved in a legal battle against Titania for the moniker She-Hulk. Nikki and Pug gave me serious Warriors 3 or Darcy vibes because Marvel has a habit of introducing these best friend characters that are supposedly important to the main heroes, just to drop them in a subsequent film or forget about them entirely. Maybe we'll see them in the background of an upcoming movie, or they'll be mentioned in a throwaway line or two, but don't get your hopes up. Small world details. It was mentioned that the Sokovia Accords had been repealed. I mean, I was always Team Cap, so I had no love for them to begin with, but you'd think Marvel would have put more than a throwaway line into this development, considering the impacts Civil War had. There were also multiple references to Wolverine, including one that was an online article referencing a man with metal claws. We of course now have confirmation from the jacked man himself that he'll be back, but it was nice to see, nonetheless. We also now have confirmation that She-Hulk's blood can be weaponized into a serum to give other people the same abilities. Okay, so this was written out of the show by our protagonist herself, but we at least know that at some point in the near future, there will be other people running around with the same abilities, but malicious intent. So, that's basically it. Were there more characters than that? Yeah, sure, such as all the C-list superpowered individuals at Blonsky's retreat, Manbull, Porcupine, and Aguila, but they really didn't play a huge part in the story. Overall, I was super disappointed with how the show turned out. After watching Orphan Black and hearing that Titania was going to be a part of the MCU, I was pretty excited, but the show wound up being a complete letdown. I think the character is salvageable because of her acting talent, but they'd have to acknowledge that the character and show as is a failure, which they won't do. I can dream though. If you made it this far, thanks for watching. Peril here, wishing you sweet dreams until next time. Oh, by the way, Jin also happened to meet the god of the Marvel Universe, Kevin, in the last episode, and used him to bring back her boy toy. Don't think too much about how that would work out if the genders were reversed, or how selfish that makes She-Hulk seem.